No, the only reason I do is because like I was watching the last like couple of days and watched like things started and stuff like that. Good catch though, because that's pretty fast. Hey, that was very fast.
And over here, that's okay. Boom. So that's working.
Yeah, for one of these or some other day, I'm gonna walk it 2 or 3 days a week. Yeah, that could work out.
Did you write it? Will you write it?
Recently,
You can just download
I don't know. Steve, what does David usually kick off, like 6:30? When does he usually start like 6:30?
We normally start?
Yeah.
We normally start late because I get here late. I just got here early. You can take as much time as you want.
But I did design. Have the design.
Yeah, like most of our like work is with fossil fuels. So I was
Exactly. Contributors. Did you take credit contributing to your workout? You can definitely. All
about some of the wonderful, like crazy things. There's such thing as I seem to remember that. I don't know, I say, I don't get. So, yeah.
And for the online viewers, we were going to get kicked off in about 10 minutes at 6:30 Central.
So we're gonna let some more people roll in. At least one, but I think that's David. I know there's like 3 or 4 people that said they're coming remotely on the meetup.com page. So, and I just put it in the Drupal Commerce channel. Yep. I just hope my computer fan doesn't start going and sound like a chainsaw for everybody that's listening.
I'm thinking of moving to Texas. And cheaper taxes. County just brought their tax up. I think it was downtown.
We should just
You want your business, they don't. Okay, I see that. Well, it's, see, yeah. Or no, that's third. That's third. Caledonia is highly, around there. Okay. I'm still looking. You don't want to be like agency. You cross. There's a couple blocks there that they don't really want railroad tracks. And the north side, that's where that kind of is.
Oh, okay. That doesn't,
They built there as I just finished high school as Trapper. Yeah, so they said, oh, good, you know, they finished in like December, October, or November, December. Now you can start moving all the buses and go to JC. My senior year, I said, you want to graduate? I said, I've got all my prerequisites and stuff that I used to finish, and I go go, and they had to do all that criteria and stuff. Where we going to? Trucking. So it's like a commercial. It's like, I had to take all these classes because I transferred it in junior year. It's like, so a year later.
so you did that kind of
It took auto. I became 7.0. It was before my other classes, like fifth grade. I also teacher, and she was like, I think somebody's going to buy this or something. Now she had to and she does all it looks pretty good. Yeah, I got these car washes too much. Good stuff like that. Interesting stuff like that. So,
Remember?
Uh-huh.
Someone you did trust the orders. So you should just use strategy.
So he has, you said a C corp or something, or?
CPA for different states and stuff, so I don't know what kind of advice you got.
We're going to get started in a few minutes, but I wanted to give a heads up that I want to hold all questions until the very, very end because I want to try to get through the slides and answer questions because Drupal Commerce is like, wow, configuration, wow. But I do have a midway pause point for like some urgent questions to help clarify some things. So there is a midway point. We're going to breathe, digest, answer a few questions. Then at the end, we'll go hog wild and take all the questions that you have. And I'll do my best to answer them. Otherwise, I'll point you to Drupal Answers on Stack Exchange. So type them up to get more answers. But I'm going to give it till 3 more minutes, just in case any more online viewers pop on.
Are you building like 10 different sites? Because it looks like it should be.
Oh, it is. It's just looping. No, I figured it's better than just staring at the same picture the whole time.
And the quick question says,
Yeah.
start, you know, since it's can it be both US and Euro?
Yeah, well, it can be anything you want, any currency. It supports like 50 plus, you name it, it can be supported.
I mean, multiple.
Oh yeah, you can do multiple currencies. And like I won't touch on that today because that's more advanced, but even in like the add to cart when it's calculating totals, it does correction. Like if you have a mixed currency, it tries to do that magic for you. So it has a built-in. And so this is actually an abstraction of a book I was starting to write last year, which would cover handling that.
All right, so there's lots of new faces here tonight. Welcome. First time attending, hope you come back. What was the introduction? You want to go first?
No, I think we should zigzag, start from the back, then I'll kick it off because I have
Wait,
a.
we'll start in that corner back there. I want to give you an idea of what you do for a real job. What you expect to get out of here.
My name's Jeff Perkins. I work for a company locally, Brass Lake Alley, a light fixture manufacturer. I've been coming to this for about 6 months, missed a couple lately, been busy. I'm implementing a Drupal site for a company.
Jim Jennings, I'm a developer over at Houston Click, we're a Drupal also here in My name's Walt Stein, I'm an engineering linguist, I run businesses, but I came here tonight because of e-commerce problems I see with the single firm in Europe and the entire industry that struggles with this. My name is Jason Gordon. I am a radio engineer at WKMD here in Milwaukee. Also like to do people development. And yeah, here to learn from that.
My name is Len. I'm mostly a marketing guy. I also do some freelance websites. I did one commerce site, and and working on other stuff now.
I'm Ben, I'm Len's neighbor.
Yeah.
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 I actually have no idea what Drupal is. I work for Shutterfly. Is it called?
David Messerschmidt, I'm a senior engineer at Rockwell, just down the street. Spend most of my time designing industrial controls, and I'm here to learn something new.
My name is Michael. I'm about to go to MSOE in the fall for software engineering, and with a big emphasis on web development and stuff like that. I've been good friends with Matt and Justin for a while, and they got my feet wet in Drupal about 6 months ago. So I'm gonna keep learning as you go.
Dave Hagan, doing site building right now for myself, just getting ready to get into my next website, doing some commerce, so.
Paul Sands, I work with Heartland, we're a payment processor, and we work with e-commerce merchants and open platform developers to enhance security and minimize fraud. Taking part in the Drupal plugin.
I guess so.
Okay, my name is Steve Kugler, and doing some of my real job, what I get paid for, I'm a Microsoft Systems Administrator. I'm also working on a software development project. It's a Java-based project. So I haven't done any Drupal development project in about 3 or 4 years. Thanks for looking.
Well, I guess it's my turn. My name's Chris. And I am waiting for next year to finish my associates at MA, also known as Bulgarian Tech, in interactive multimedia. I started into my favorite is the WordPress site, but through the CMS classes that I've had, we were introduced to Drupal, the ballpark.
Mhm.
And as I said, I'm more used to this here to sort of pick up a few more things. Catch up with X, Y, and Z.
Cool.
My name is Justin Cornell. I'm trying to develop, also started a little business on the side with Matt. Pick up on anything I can help on.
So that leaves me. So welcome to Drupal Commerce, So my name is Constructed. I'm all the pieces how they work. I'm not to Commerce guys. Recently, I was the team lead at Git and maintainer of Commerce Report. Hurting just my first experience with Drupal was building a Drupal, and I recently became a site in the co-maintainer and one of Drupal Commerce and Commerce things started. So I've been maintainer so there's my little backend and the cardinal conscious of commerce. As given this, so we meet up page Drupal. We're going to dive in commerce and the Drupal. The module ones, like you're not going to need like this random sub-module into the project. It's the big hitters of the ecosystem that you probably are going to need if you're using other items. So we're going to dive into those first. Like what makes Drupal Commerce powerful? Entity API. Drupal Commerce uses the entity API and provides 5 different entities in total that all interact. You don't need all of them to make a comment, to utilize the system, but it provides 5. And when you combine all of them, you have Drupal as an e-commerce platform. You have line items, products, orders, customer profiles, and payment transactions. Once we kind of gritty, we'll dive into work. Views, people probably experience with. When it comes to entity, if you're a developer, you've probably tapped into it. But everybody, if you built a Drupal site, 90%, has used views. So there's no custom code that display the administrative pages or even the shopping views and views like global areas to display information. So if you're managing your products, it's a view. If you're managing orders, it's a view. If you're managing customer profiles, it's a view, which means you can customize. Even order administration, like individual orders, when you go to the tab for payments, that's a view that's showing payment entities. Second, makes commerce quite powerful in my opinion. How many people here have used rules? Handful. How many people have never heard of rules? All right, so rules is essentially a UI for making conditions. It's writing if-else statements in a UI. If else is true, perform this action. Drupal Commerce harnesses most of its functionality by triggering events and rules that allow you to hook in and do certain actions. Some examples, product pricing, right? You need to know the price. Rules can allow you to adjust that price. Taxes are actually applied via rules. That's how you get that dropped in, and we're going to touch on how that all comes together. And to kick it off, payment gateways to the payment module are actually rules actions. So you have an order, it needs payment. Well, the payment gateway that's allowed goes through rules, and it gets applied via an action, and then there's more magic along the way. And lastly, fields, the core fields module, which you couldn't have the entity API fully like integrated unless you use fields to help custom data. For example, prices are handled through the commerce price field. That's where all this really comes together. If you didn't have fields in that price field, you'd be kind of tied with your hand behind your back. Line items are gathered through a line item reference field. Product reference fields are, and customer profile reference fields. So now, that's like the base. That's the non-commerce system that the contributed projects that commerce utilizes to make what it does happen. So that's not just why it's Drupal-y. It's Drupal-y because it utilizes 11 submodules itself that come together to build the system. There's cart, checkout, customer, line item, order, payment, price, product, product pricing, product reference, and tax. I think this GIF is quite suiting if you are first exposed and you go to turn on Drupal Commerce and like, I want a commerce site. And then you turn on commerce and you don't have anything. And you kind of get like slapped around like, what's going on? It is a good thing. Decoupled design allows for complexity and implementation and ultimate flexibility, right? That's the key. You can pull all the pieces like Legos and build something great. Commerce builds on that. So it is a bit perplexing at first, like how do I make like these all come together? But that's what we're going to dive in today to help you get a head start on that. So this is where I'm going to hit my pause time, because I know that was a whole test. Before we dive into some questions, there is Commerce Kickstart. When we were sitting here waiting, opinionated to go that install of what a Drupal whereas for the Drupal Commerce, like Commerce Kickstart could look like. Well, that store, I want to add a store that seriously footnote if it please, if you decide to try not buy Commerce, because you can't. I don't want the sometimes are in code with like issues and turn into a production site. Made the same mistake, so it happens. So before we kick over, the next slide is going to be going into all the different submodules we listed. Are there any immediate questions? Because I either talk too fast, more clarification. So good. All right. So I try to put these in order that they make sense to kind of cascade down all the different components and you see the relationships. How many people are familiar with the term normalization of data? For those who aren't, the idea is to decouple your data as much as possible, to break it into as many pieces as make sense. Drupal Commerce does that. So you need to keep that in mind. Things relate to each other and utilize itself instead of being in a flat structure. Uber structures, that wasn't seen as a benefit, kind of solidly normalized. So we'll start with the commerce price module. It handles pricing as a field on entities such as line items, products, and orders. That's where you get your monetary value. And you can also use commerce price in non-commerce situations. If you have content that needs to show a price, I download the commerce project. You don't need all the other modules, but it provides a very unique way to handle monetary values. To support a large array of currency formats. It's in the doc somewhere, but you can define all the different currency conversions and how it's displayed. You're not limited to the US dollars and all the big ones. You can define your own custom one, like if you had your own country and you decide to come up with your own currency. Bitcoin's not in there. You can come up with a Bitcoin currency format. It's composed of multiple components. That's where this is really interesting and why I say it can be reused. That price you see is actually an aggregated total of all the different components that make up the array of data. It's not in this slide because that gets really in depth. If anybody wants to chat about that, I can show some examples. The other unique thing, in the database, it's stored in a non-decimal format. It's stored, so if it's your product's $10 in the database, it's 1000. That gets loaded and then displayed according to your currency way. Some currencies don't use a comma for or a period for decimal, they use comma, and that's how that gets abstracted. So next, we're going to jump to line. I think people don't really realize the integral role play in Drupal Commerce, and in my opinion, it's what makes Drupal brought in right away. Think of a line item as a bridge entity for relationships and data. We're going to dive into that more as we go. You'll start to see that concept reinforced. They have a quantity attribute. You know, when you buy a t-shirt, you have 1, 2, or 3. Line items have your quantity. There's a unit price field and a calculated total price field. So your unit price, if you have a t-shirt that's $9.99, that's the unit price. The calculated total on the entity saved says, what's the unit price? What's my quantity? Multiply, and then it updates that total field. Line items are intended to relate to an order and expecting to be attached to one. That's actually an attribute unto the entity with the order ID that it belongs to. Line items are utilized for shipping services, discounts, coupons, fees, and anything else that you need to manipulate an order. So even though we're not really talking about the contributed modules, but if you utilized commerce shipping, commerce discount, commerce coupon, those are actually implementing their own custom line items to help give you those kind of features in your commerce site. And they kind of help tie this together now before it gets too abstract and you're like, what? An order is a collection of line items. That's why it has that reference on the attribute level, because it is intended to belong to an order, and an order has a bunch of line items. So next, we'll touch on the product entity. So the product entity represents a variant of an item for sale. You're going to hear the word variant and variance a whole heck of a lot. So think of it this way. When you're in a store and you have a rack right here of like blue t-shirts, you have a medium blue t-shirt, you have a large blue t-shirt, you have a small blue t-shirt. Is that one product or 3? That's 3 products. So that's your variant. You know, you go in there like, I need to buy a blue t-shirt, but actually there's 3 kinds of blue t-shirts. That's why products are their own entity, to provide that kind of complexity and flexibility to represent your actual stock of what a product is. Fields on a product act as attributes such as size and color, like we just went through, with the cart module. The cart module lets you expose fields on that entity as your attributes, so your size and color. Intended to be a single entity for single variations. Like I just said right there, you go in to buy your blue t-shirts, you have 3 different products, even though it's 3 different sizes. So when you have the cart module and you're using attributes, when you add something to your cart, you aren't actually putting that product entity anywhere. You're creating a line item that references the product and then gets attached to the order. So to kind of hop back a step, I said that it's like a bridge for relationships and belongs to an order. That's where it comes in with products. Your order contains line items, and if it's a product line item, you have a way to go figure out what product it is actually for. In this case, I missed this on the slide, but products have a unique SKU that's its identifier, right? All your variants should have a unique identifier such as your SKU, and line items actually get, product line items get the SKU set as its label. So now we're going to go to the product reference field. This actually isn't an implementation of entity reference. It is its own reference field because it does specific kinds of magic. Which first I want to touch on product display. This is another keyword term. When you're working with commerce, you're going to hear product display and go, what the hell is that? Like, I don't know what that is. It's any node that has a product reference field and is expecting to contain products. So as we said before, you walked in to buy your blue t-shirts. Think of the blue t-shirts as your node. And then all your variants, your small blue t-shirt, medium blue t-shirt, large blue t-shirt, are the variants that are referenced through the product reference field. So when you have the cart module enabled, this product reference field is what lets you provide the add to cart functionality, and we'll dive into that more when we get to that module. But this plays an integral role of not only referencing your variants, but allowing people to buy them. So as I said, defines your variations because the total reference products are all the variations you have of that product. And as I said, it's not extending entity reference. It is its own reference field with its own logic. It allows you to pull fields off the product entity and render them with the node. So you don't need to say, since the product reference field isn't going to be directly rendering a product, it's going to be used like as a cart. It allows you to control the price field, the attributes, other items directly as if they were part of the node itself. So you can put them in different places using panels. You could say, I want the product title to be here underneath the image and it's going to act like that field was attached to the node itself. So next is product pricing. No bullet list because it's pretty straightforward what it does. Product pricing module, I consider it an API that extends hooks provided by the price module and utilizes rules to adjust the components of a price field to increase or decrease the total value. Commerce price, if you look at the API file, has a way to hook in how price is displayed. Well, instead of putting this robust functionality in the commerce price module and making it bloated, it was abstracted to its own submodule because you may not need product pricing. You may not need dynamic rules. This taps into that one hook and allows you to decide if you're going to do a sale price, or in the case of taxes, which utilizes this, apply taxes. So now we're going to jump over to orders and how line items are essentially a bridge entity for relationships. I consider orders like a hub. It's an entity that contains line items, so it just holds references to a bunch of line items that is the representation of what you bought or what kind of discounts you have. The order total is calculated through aggregating all the line items and taking their computed total, bundling them together, and then saying, here's your complete price. Orders are owned by a user identified through the UID or the email address. They have different states such as canceled, pending, or completed, and that kind of can define how operations are done on them. And orders can be created through the admin UI. So you can go into the back end, create an order, and handle all that. In fact, if you don't have the cart module, that's the only way you can make an order. So we're going to jump over to customer profiles. This is a small bit of the commerce system that you need. Orders have customer profiles attached. So it has another entity reference to profiles, such as a billing profile that has your customer's address. Stores information such as the address field modules data, or you could put phone number, other information you might need to collect about them. There is no way for a customer to actually manage their existing profiles unless you install a contributed module such as Commerce Address Book. And customer profiles are required for payment and commerce shipping. Payment, because when you submit a credit card, usually in somebody's name, address, all that good stuff. Shipping is the same way. You can't send something unless you know what their address is. Commerce shipping actually creates a new profile type called shipping. Self-explanatory there. And again, those just get a reference put on the order, so that way commerce knows what your customer's billing and shipping information is. So now we'll go over to payment, since now that we have information on how to charge people, you can implement some kind of payment. It's a way to pay for the order's total, and it allows for balances if the order's not paid in full. So if you went and made a partial payment, it will keep track of that. So that way you know that, hey, this order is only half paid off, and it will still accept more transactions. Once an order is paid in full, it doesn't allow you to put a transaction on it, at least charge more to it. You can still do refunds. Transactions are entities, but they're not defined as fieldable. And I put that as a footnote because if you want to get buck wild and you're doing something crazy, you can do an entity info alter and set fieldable to true and attach metadata to your transactions. What if you have a business case where it's not suitable for putting some information and stashing it in the order somewhere as a field? Every transaction needs some kind of extra information. You could turn it into a fieldable entity that you can store data somewhere. It's not exposed to the UI anywhere, but in your custom code, you can start grabbing at it and setting it. Again, payments are made through the UI. Go to an order and you have a fancy little tab that says payments that let you see all payments or create them. So far we talked about orders and profiles and payments, which all can be created through the admin UI. So think of it, this is one way that I try to explain how checkout and cart end up working. Without checkout, the only way to pay for an order and mark an order as completed is as an admin. You can log in as administrator, post a payment for somebody, then mark it as completed. Checkout, it's like a user interface to edit an order as a non-administrator. As a customer, this allows them to edit their order. On checkout, it allows them to fill in their billing profile or shipping profile, which they have no other way to edit. It allows them to create a payment transaction. So payment provides a checkout pane, which lets them enter the information to charge them. And once they complete checkout, it marks it as complete. So think of checkout as the user's user interface to edit an order they own. It also provides a checkout state for orders, so that way you can see like, oh, it's in checkout. I know what process this is in. I made a billing software service called Billington, where it creates an order, and then the customer is emailed a link that's site/checkout and takes them straight to the checkout modules process. So keep in mind, you don't need cart to use checkout. That's why this is great that it's highly decoupled, because it is useful when you have only certain parts of the pieces. So now that we have checkout, let's hop over to cart. So cart provides the add to cart field formatter for product references. All of these talks about referencing other entities and exposing attributes, cart lets it come together. So when you're viewing a product reference field and it has the add to cart formatter, anything that you expose as an attribute is now a drop-down list or radio buttons. And you're like, I want this blue shirt. I don't want green. I want it small. I click. Turns it into an interface for creating orders, not through the admin UI. You're giving power to your site visitors to create an order on their own without having to call you and you do it in the admin UI. Think of it in that scope to help conceptualize why it is decoupled this way. It also provides a way for customers to access checkout. In the case I just brought up, my system has to email them a link to do checkout. Well, the cart page has a nice link that brings them to the proper checkout URL. So not only can they create an order themselves, they're able to go through the checkout process themselves. So create and edit an order. And I put user interface to create an order twice. It provides a cart state, which allows you to trigger pricing rules on an order. So typically, pricing rules only run whenever you're viewing a product display and that entity is loaded and is showing you the price. If you go through the order, it's at that price forever. It's that snapshot. But while it's in a cart, it allows product pricing rules to keep running until they enter checkout. So if they added a product to their order and all of a sudden you did a sale and they came back, it allows them to get that sale without having to remove the item and add it back. Or taxes. Which we're going to cover taxes, and I totally meant to add more items to this, but taxes are just insane as it goes. Taxes are price components, so when a tax is added, it's just adding another component to that price field that gets calculated. So if you need to add $2 in tax, it's going to add that component, and when the price field's computed, boom, actually $2. So it works in a similar fashion to pricing rules. And this is where I meant to expand upon it. So in e-commerce, you need to charge tax if you have a brick and mortar building in the same area that it is being either shipped to or billed to. I always get the two mixed up and have to Google it. But if in some way your customer is related to where you have a brick and mortar building and operations, you need to charge tax. That's the general rule. I know in some areas it gets really quirky. Like I think either Washington or Oregon, you have to do like by the county and all this other stuff. So since taxes are pricing rules and rules is a visual condition builder, you can add conditions to it. Does the customer profile on my order say it has the state Wisconsin? Crud, we're shipping out of Wisconsin, drop 5% state tax on their order. So that's where that ties in then with product pricing rules. Okay, so we made it, and that was a lot. And I mean a lot. We just went through 11 modules. Well, actually, if you count the others, we went through like 15 or so. And that's really hard to digest, even if you'd read all the docs in the world, even if I finished my book and you read the book, you'd still go like, what the heck, Matt? I don't know what this is, or what the heck, Drupal community, like someone answer my questions. So luckily, there's a few distributions that can help you on the way to at least get you started and help you learn kind of what's there, or at least once you get more comfortable, make it easier to keep it going instead of clicking and enabling all these things and being like, I don't know what I need. So Drupal Commerce distributions, yes, there is more than one, because generally when I think of Drupal Commerce distributions, I think of Commerce Kickstart. Right when Drupal Commerce first came out, I don't know the whole backstory, but this was the way that they got Drupal Commerce into the forefront. It was like a marketing push, like, hey, here's Drupal Commerce. It's a new open source e-commerce platform. It provides a demo store installation complete with products, categories, blog, ad placements with a typo, and more. So you have a catalog out the bat. That's the installer that was going through. And taken directly from the project page. Who should use Commerce Kickstart? Anyone who wants to skip weeks of configuration to build a commerce site on the Drupal Commerce framework. And as you can see with all that we ran through, having all that kind of done up for you and seeing what a complete Drupal Commerce site looks like can be a big win, because you can kind of deconstruct it and see what do all the parts do. It's an opinionated way to get started on your first project. I say opinionated because it sets you up to have a commerce store, but in the way it was built, which may not necessarily work for your fashion, but you're not going to know that till you start going. And that's how it is with Drupal, right? You get a module, you think like this is going to work great for me, you start configuring it, and maybe you hit some roadblocks, or any distribution, in fact. So next, I want to touch on Commerce Deploy, which is actually a project I started a year ago, because there was only Commerce Kickstart, and I felt that was too heavy for site builders and even developers. So Commerce Deploy is my developer distribution for Commerce to help get you going. And it's intended to be a base distribution, kind of like Panoply, where you can pick and pull the different parts. Except this isn't intended to be opinionated at all, except for incorporating patches and other improvements that probably won't make it into other modules, and you don't need to save a pile of gists. So it's composed of core, which has commerce, entity, all the base items. Backend, which provides commerce back office, an improved admin order creation, nav bar instead of the Commerce Kickstart toolbar or admin menu, checkout, customer, product, promotions, and shipping. So you can check all that out later. I say it's for developers by a developer. So once you get good on your commerce chops and you're feeling like you want to start cranking stuff out, give it a run as your base. And lastly, I wanted to touch on Mojo Cart, which is a project I originally dinged around with Justin last year, I think, but it's kind of went on the back burner, but I relaunched it a week ago. It ties together Panoply and Commerce Deploy to create a robust e-commerce distribution powered by panels and other great site building tools that Panoply provides, and then all the jumpstart of commerce through Commerce Deploy. And it's intended to be opinionated, not quite like Commerce Kickstart, but at least you could open it and have more of a store started than you would with Commerce Deploy. Which, the end. I know I went a bit fast, and that was intended because I knew there was going to be more questions than I could possibly fit on my slides. So I would like to turn it over to questions.
An example where you might use UberCart.
I've only been doing Drupal for 2 years. I touched the UberCart site once, and I hated it because. So here's an example. Does stock matter to you? If somebody buys a product, does it matter to you if you're going to sell out of that product? And you might have to back order it and then call that person that their order won't be there in 2 weeks because you ran out of a product.
So you don't have like a stock list, you're selling a subscription and you're selling another.
Well, I want to go back to that one. Follow me with that because this is a good case. Just entertain me with that.
Amazon solved that problem. They just say that it's nothing.
But that's not the point right now. The point is the difference between UberCart and Commerce, and we're going to go with stock. Attributes are flat in UberCart. I don't know the exact architecture. I've touched one UberCart site, but I know that it's not on a line item basis where your variant isn't actually a variation. It's just like metadata on the product. So if somebody buys one, how do you know your stock? Where if it's an entity that has a field, that has a trackable field data that you can decrement whenever it's purchased, you have a real understanding of your product, and you can disable that variant automatically. It's like unpublishing a node, except you're disabling a product, and then it doesn't show in the added cart. You don't have any loss of data. You can replenish the stock, and you can bring that product back to life and then have it be purchasable. So that's one case where I would use Drupal Commerce over UberCart because it provides a realization of your data in your store, which in my opinion, you need if you're going to do enterprise commerce.
I can jump in on that one.
Yeah.
We've got UberCart and Drupal Commerce sites. UberCart's really nice because it's like a one-to-one relationship for your products. You've got one thing that it work with. With Commerce, you look at it's a collection of SKUs. You sell a T-shirt. T-shirt comes with red, green, and blue. Comes with small, medium, and large. That's 9 different objects. We find it's kind of hard for our customers to deal with that concept as opposed to one item. But going forward, any kind of e-commerce on Drupal is going to be commerce. So like UberCart, that's our D6 sites. D7, it's all commerce.
Which that's how Amazon does it actually. We had a project where we did an Amazon web store and they do product variants. I want to figure out how I haven't had a chance to look at it, but it's like if Amazon's doing it, like how can we steal their UX that people don't complain about in Drupal Commerce? Because you're right, adding variants is a pain.
Can you go over I got some questions of terminology. You use the terms entity. Is that the same as an object?
Yeah.
So a component is a actual property of an entity. I mean,
yeah. So
a couple of these terms are on here. And just trying to line up the.
So in Drupal, there is the concept of entity, which is just a data model. In Drupal 8,
the data model, not an object.
Well, it's an object, but it's the concept is like of a data model. Because it's not actually an object. There isn't like a PHP object that says like, it doesn't like when you're looking at the structure, there isn't like a class called product, and that when you get that object in your data, you know it's a product entity. That's Drupal 8-ness. Drupal 7, entity is more of like a concept of a data model that can have attributes and then fields attached to it. Like a node.
I'm sorry, do you remember nodes in D6?
Yeah, I hated them.
Like, and you can take CCK fields and put them on a node in D6. It's taking that concept and applying it across the whole platform. Like a user is an entity, so I can add fields.
So instead of it being a node, it ends up being an entity?
Yeah, no, it is an entity, and it's like a.
A node is, if you, when I first started, if you do SQL and you do normalization databases, a node is something like kind of contrived from engineers. It's really, it doesn't map to.
So I guess one way to say it is, I'm trying to figure out how to explain it. An entity has its own its own table in the database, and then the entity system has a way to wrap that and provide it extra functionality. Just because in D8 an entity like is more of a thing, it's still in D7.
When I think of an entity, I think of encapsulation, of having some kind of bounded properties for this.
Yeah, it's that in D8 and D7. It's not that really. I mean, the ideas are there. I don't know how best to explain.
In Drupal 7, the entity system was just not fully mature by the time 7.0 was released.
Yeah.
So the concepts are the same. It's just by Drupal 8, it's now fully baked. You can add fields more easily.
Which
they're actual class of objects, whereas in Drupal 7, they're just standard objects that have this functionality tacked onto them.
Which I wanted to just tie into that. The entity API, like modern ones, have that. Like I know the message stack, the message module actually implements, it extends the entity base class that got added. But Drupal Commerce was set up before like 7 was finalized, and then the entity API module was like finalized. So Commerce is like frozen to entity, some revision of the entity module. Like its entity structure is at a certain time in the past. Although not to say it's badly implemented, but it's kind of been like frozen. So if you do look at it at modules that have stayed up to date with the entity API in D7, it's going to be contrasting in some of the implementation, but it's still there.
I guess that's the hardest part about coming into Drupal is that Drupal has its own terms. And when you're a programmer that comes, like I was on IBM hardware. So we used DB2, which had an SQL interface, which I loved. I learned SQL that way. But when you start talking about tables, fields, relationships and stuff, you're wondering how that goes into Drupal and what terms they're using. Like it's an entity as a table. Well, that kind of explains some things, but they use fields, and is a field in a table, or is it?
So I guess
you get to entity reference, all these things. It's like, how do they fit together when you're talking about the database and how you're creating things? Because I'd like to create a database.
Don't think of the database. You're using a CMS. You shouldn't be thinking in terms of the database. You should be thinking in terms of the CMS. When it comes to terminology, but I'm just, if you're using the CMS, you're intending it to provide you some kind of framework and structure. So you have to abstract your thinking. Remember, terminology is a CS problem. You go from one language to another. The concepts are still the same, but the language is different. The keywords.
Learn a new one, there should be some kind of a.
But when you.
This is kind of like this.
I don't
explain it.
But when you use the term normalization, I mean that is clearly articulated in a relational database model. It's not, it means a very specific thing. And when I looked at Drupal, normalization wasn't like, maybe it's changed because, like I said, I've been working on the second a long time. Normalization is like not really.
I meant it more in that it's not a flat structure like UberCart is, where you have all these different entities and there's all these references. In a normalized data, like an order doesn't have your billing information actually on the order. It's referencing billing profiles somewhere else. All the line items that make up the order, instead of having, you're having a one-to-many relationship from your order to your line items. You're billing instead of having extra fields on your order, because how would you handle billing, shipping, or refund? what if you had 3 profiles? So your order has a one-to-one relationship, as each profile should be its own field, but it's normalized in that sense. Instead of putting the billing information on the actual order entity in that database table, it's normalized into its own. If that.
So you said something about not using Kickstarter. So what does the development platform look like for this? I mean, you made a clear statement. Don't use Kickstarter as the basis for your.
No, you can use Kickstart without the demo store. Don't use the demo store option. If you're using the internet, well, one, if you do Drush SI Commerce Kickstart, you're going to get the demo store. So if you want to use Commerce Kickstart and not the demo store, use the interactive installer, which is the user, and go to www.mysite/install.
Okay, so this is about pulling in all the other data into the model.
Yeah.
Getting screwed.
So when you install it, when it defaults to yes, click it on no, so that when you install a site, it actually will give you options of certain configurations that you can pick and pull from, but it's not going to give you a example site out of the box that way. Commerce Kickstart, if you do the non-demo store, is a great way to get started in learning commerce and doing like your first site. I'm speaking out of experience that as I became more and more comfortable, I needed something else that wasn't as opinionated, as I like to put it.
So the data modeling for this is pretty standard. It doesn't, if you go to any kind of system that's worth trading orders and those relationships are pretty standard.
Yep. And if anything, you're going to find that you might need to build some things or command it to your way, because it doesn't make opinions to how you do business.
So what was the hardest part for you doing this?
Understanding how to make a product page. Understanding the concept of, here's a product display that references products. Luckily, there's the inline entity form, which allows you to edit your variations from your node. Otherwise, you'd have to go to different areas. But understanding that I create my t-shirt, and then I have to add small, medium, large as variations. Well, then if I have blue and green, I have to make small, medium, large green, small, medium, large blue, and have 6 entries.
Oh, so it's not really an object. It really is a variant. It's really instances of a thing.
Yeah. So think of
that's the multiple SKU thing. So every time I have an instance of a thing, I get another SKU.
Yeah.
Oh God.
So think of it as when you go in a store and you go to a shelf flow and you want to buy that t-shirt, do you have 3 different shelves for all sizes, or are they generally mixed together? So when you go to when you're shopping and you see all these attributes, you're actually going and digging through a shelf. So I think that take your physical shopping experience and the data is represented that way. That's how I see it working.
Now, does it just sequentially number the SKUs?
No, you have to manually type it in unless you have Commerce auto SKU.
But auto SKU, is that just sequential, or can you say small blue would be a 1, the last digit would be a 1, and things like that?
No, not like that. So you could have it where it automatically creates a SKU based off attributes. So you could say, I know that of my shoes product type, because you have multiple product types with variations. You could have it say, I want to start with shoe hyphen size hyphen color, let's say. So every time you make a variation, it has that in it, or it could even take from the product's title. Or no, I don't think you can take from the title and SKU creation, but all the other items you can.
I could see how you could shoot yourself in the head if you provide the wrong kind of nomenclature for your product definition.
Yeah. It definitely has a huge overhead, or not overhead. Drupal already has a curve when you're jumping into it, and then Commerce has its own.
But anyway, I actually had to work on taxes for division of CRE, and there was a function software that we were going to load on. All the attributes that go into things, whether it's a food item, whether it's this or that, because all the different districts and like in Louisiana, you have parishes. All of these different groups can tax different things at different rates, and they're all cumulative. And even zip code doesn't work, because you can have a zip code that actually crosses a county line or crosses a city line. It can be half in the city and half out of the city. And so the city tax applies to the ones in the city, but not to the ones over. And there are, there are commerce modules that you can actually use third parties to calculate your taxes. And you just give them the attribute of this is a food item, this is whatever. And if you have to break it down that much, then they will figure out each of the taxing locations, and they will also make the payments for you. So quarterly or whatever, they'll send the payment into that district.
That's one thing I wanted to bring up. If you're going to get into the e-commerce game, look up some of those vendors, especially ones that are with commerce. Go to marketplace.commerceguys.com, I think it is, and we have it listed there. So look at it. Who's the biggest retailer right now online? Anybody? Amazon? Okay. Amazon has lots of money, right? What gets laws made? Lots of money. What's the biggest thicket right now for online sales? Taxes. Who's going to help dictate where a lot of the taxes go? Amazon. And what are they going to make it do? Make it be complicated, but enough that they can solve it themselves. So do you want to deal with that? I wouldn't want to. I would definitely recommend that if you have a tax situation where, like, let's say if you're using a fulfillment center, you have to collect taxes in their 3 different states or 4 different states, whatever they have. You can figure it out, or find out what the fee is for this third-party service and tap into that and let them do all that for you. That way you don't need to keep up with tax laws unless you're at an organization that can have an accountant that figures all that out. If you can afford to figure it out yourself and write like the rules to do that, thumbs up, go for it. But as things get more complicated and as it becomes a bigger battleground, I definitely foresee that the large online retailers will make the tax realm be extremely complicated, but in a way that they can handle it. And it's going to wedge out some of the smaller organizations where they need to, what if all of a sudden Amazon's like, hey, we have this tax calculating service? That's business, right? That's how business goes. So if you do have tax, I highly recommend looking at third-party providers that help you figure out what you need to charge for tax.
By the way, these municipalities and stuff love for you to screw it up, because then they hit you with penalties that are worth far more than you had to pay them. So. And
one thing, it was kind of out of the scope with this. I tried to make this because it's deconstructing Drupal Commerce, not the issues of building a commerce site. Yeah, well, because it's there, but PCI compliance. If you're going to work with e-commerce, be aware of PCI compliance. I'm gonna make a plug to a slide quick if I can figure out. That's not what I want. Google PCI compliance white paper. There's a site called drupalpcicompliance.org, and you can download this white paper to get some reading up on it. I'm not going to say it's going to make you a pro, but it's going to make you go, wow, this is a lot that I need to do to make sure that I'm compliant and I don't let my people's information get stolen. So there are different payment gateways that Drupal Commerce supports, and you need to know all the different issues around them, around PCI compliance. So that is one footnote I want to add. Just because your Drupal Commerce out of the box doesn't make you PCI compliant. Nothing does. No CMS, no commerce framework is going to make you PCI compliant by just using it. Unless you're using Shopify or some software as a service, because they're offloading that for you. But if you're setting up an e-commerce store, doesn't matter what you use. You're going to need to do some footwork to make it compliant. Don't be Home Depot. Don't be Target.
To speak to this PCI compliance, you're going to find that your client, their credit card processors are going to start charging extra dollars a month if they're not PCI compliant. And most of the issues that they're going to have are going to be server related. They're going to hit the server, they're going to scan it, they're looking for open ports, they're looking for outdated software, they're looking for old ciphers on SSL and TLS, all that kind of stuff. And it's going to be a major hit, so you really have to be on top. Who's behind that? Usually the credit card processing company or the individual bank.
Which leads to, if you're patching Drupal and not doing the update, you may be reported as wrong version 2.
I mean, sure, probably, but I mean,
I haven't run up against that. It's usually server issues.
yeah, they're going to be looking at the server. Can someone get it? Can someone leak the memory and start siphoning credit card information, right? Like, wasn't it like Home Depot? It's the firmware, was it Home Depot or the other one? Like, it was the firmware of the card swiper had memory leaks. Was that Target? But I mean, that's what they're going to be looking for. Outdated server software, yeah, obviously, but that's an issue with no matter what, Drupal, WordPress, Magento, any of those. You're going to have those issues. This paper is open source too. I follow it on GitHub just to see all the pull requests, and I can't remember for the life of me. So Rick's behind it, but I can't remember where he works for. But that's who's been the power behind it. There's issues, even like describing some things. Mostly it's grammar and how it's built. But occasionally there will be pull requests that come in with updating it. So it is constantly under update. It's not like this was published like 3 years ago when Drupal 7 like got solidified and Drupal Commerce was like huge, and it was like, it is geared more towards Drupal Commerce and some of its terminology. It does provide information about UberCart. Here's one more thing about UberCart. Outside of the web server root, it wants you to store a key somewhere so that way it can temporarily save payment information. Where's the big red flag there? Storing payment information on the server. Drupal Commerce won't. The one thing you have to watch out for is some of the payment gateways will do some processing of the information on the server before sending it off. Again, this is going to get way out of scope where I wanted this to go, but that's one reason that I like Drupal Commerce more than UberCart. When I said that nothing's PCI compliant out of the box, some things can take steps to make sure you're more so than not. And that white paper will cover the differences between having something that processes on the server or uses crazy iframe workarounds or just goes off-site like PayPal.
Yeah. What's the relationship between a customer profile and a user account?
Nothing. So that's interesting. And Commerce 2.x, it's going to be utilizing a profile 2 module. So that way it's there. I don't know the backstory. That's for Boyan and Ryan to scout about. But I'm guessing that nothing was existing that could provide a way to say what's a customer's profile, like information. What if you have anonymous users that can check out? They don't have a user created until the end of the checkout process. Commerce will say what's the email address on the order if they're logged out. If they're logged out and they have that email and that email matches up with an existing user, boom, it associates that order, you're rocking and rolling. If not, it can create a user for them. Well, it does, unless you disable the rule. It creates a user, sends them an email saying, hey, click this one-time login link so you can set up your account. How do you save their billing information if they're not logged in and get an account created? So that's where my train of thought goes to, is how do you solve that solution? An entity that stores that information and then relates to it. And technically, every time you go through the checkout, then you'd be reusing, not even reusing, you're creating a new billing profile, new shipping profile every checkout, unless you use Commerce Address Book, which provides a UI in the checkout to reuse addresses. So it's there. Going to be better in Drupal 8 with Commerce 2.x.
Are you saying that you're a proponent of having everybody who wants to use e-commerce site be a member of the site?
There's benefits to doing that.
I don't think that's.
I didn't say that either.
As a user, I wouldn't like that.
I didn't say it was a benefit. I was a proponent of it. Every time I've set up a commerce site, I didn't require a login. I'm just saying that it creates an account for them if they check out, so that way you can log in and view your orders. I mean, you're not going to be able to view them anonymously. I'm just saying that's why I'm assuming there is profiles built out that way, so that way you can collect data and associate it without having known their account.
So I have a question. So is the Kickstart out of the box? Does it have a basic theming to actually do e-commerce without building the site?
Yeah, here.
All these entities are pretty standard, so I'm assuming that.
Let me see what state my Kickstart site is. Which?
And I got another question. Is this suited for like software deployment for licensing, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, actually, platform.sh and platform.sh, the hosting thing that got spun on in Commerce Guys, Drupal Commerce is powering. I'm going to buy a development environment. I'm going to buy more disk space, more RAM, Drupal Commerce. Once that's not what yeah.
Do what I type.
So am I getting the sense that you have a commerce site that then build a Drupal site?
Yeah, that.
Yep.
It is.
Before 2 years ago in March, I never built a Drupal site. And then it was like, hey, we need an e-commerce site. And I Googled, found Commerce Kickstart, built it on a demo store, didn't need some of the stuff. And I was like, crap, I have to delete the whole thing and redo it because I installed on the demo store. You can't delete like the shoes node type because it's in code because of the Drupalism. But I thought they had demos on here. Maybe not. But if you did want to, Pantheon Commerce Kickstart. Want to spin up a quick demo site? Go to Commerce, go to Pantheon. Oh, that's not going to work because I think I'm on a dev sites. Nope. All right. Cool. So that's going to install you Kickstart. It's a great way to play around with it. Like I said, you could totally take a non-demo store and build something out of it. Like take just import. Bam. Just straight up commerce site. Commerce Kickstart even has the default, not even the default theme customized. And sells discs. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Here, you know what? Talking about my first site on Commerce, just Camo. 10,000 products, or no, 1,000 products, 10,000 page views a day. 2,800 products, 10,000 page views a day. Migrate them from a Magento site. This is Commerce Kickstart out of the box. Well, not out. Yeah, pretty much out of the box. I made a custom catalog, but this is Commerce Kickstart underneath it all. My point of view is just saying that if you want to become better at Drupal Commerce and you want to do some different things, you need something that's not as opinionated. That's the way I like to put it. Most distributions are very opinionated to what you're going to get out of the box. Open Atrium, you're going to get a tool set for workplaces. Panoply is one where you can install it and you're a site builder kind of free to munge it to what you would like. Commerce Kickstart is kind of harder to munge it to what you like. But yeah, I mean they're rocking and rolling on this.
What distribution was this based off of?
Or is this that's Commerce Kickstart, no demo.
You just uncheck demo and started running with that?
Yep. This one then? Awesome. This is it where it's supposed to be. So this is what Commerce Kickstart looks like when you do a install the demo site. Let me log in here.
So
Before I even log
I have a question for you. If you have a very minimal requirement for content, could you just blend that into a Kickstart?
Bam. Spin this up. Uncheck the demo store. Like that's what I mean. Like if you just need to put a store up and sell some T-shirts or even like books that need to get shipped, this is good. You're rocking and rolling with this.
Could you extend this? If you were selling a software product, could you extend it to have like a support page, a product page, that kind of crap?
Yeah, you could totally take this base and then toss in commerce license and like recurring and take what it's given you and make it more. I'm just saying that if you become more advanced, I just felt like as I became more advanced, you needed some things stripped away. That was always.
I mean, it's really hard to, it's easier for me, it would be easier for me to start with this and add this stuff.
Well, yeah,
And have-
that's-
and start with a Drupal site and try to figure out what the hell.
When you say like a support page, are you talking about just a basic page?
Yeah, so if you,
Yeah, it's still very
so let's just say instead of this was a commerce site where you bought software, right?
Mhm.
And if you bought the software, there was a support element to it. And so if you came back to the site, it would say support, you pull down the page, and it would say, contact Fred Bob. If you wanted a contact page, I'm assuming that stuff is pretty.
Yeah, so I mean, it's all still, so I mean, you still have like the ability to do basic pages. It's just like, take
So-
Drupal and add the commerce stuff to it.
Which- Even without the demo store installed, you can have the blog thing set up for you. Just, when you do demo store, it gives you demo content. Even when you don't install the demo store, it still creates 2 example terms and 2 example products so that way you can just see what it's like. But when you come in here, it has these default product display types of like carry, drink, hats, something else. If you try to remove them, you can't because the node type is defined in code, and Drupal, when it's defined in code, you can't take it out. So that's why I say don't do the demo store if you plan on making it a production site. Great to sandbox and play around and learn. When I do module development, it's either on Commerce Kickstart or on the deploy, depending on what I'm working on. Was there any other main question? So logged in, Commerce Kickstart does provide a different toolbar that is geared towards people who aren't Drupalers and is more geared to like site owners, which can be good, but some people might be like, I want to know how to get to here. If you're experienced with Drupal, it's one of the well-paid things, such as site settings would be structured. You get like structured people, some of that stuff. Yeah, so when you get into here, using back office, it does give users a quick edit to be able to manage the variations. So to go on the whole node display, this is a node we're going to be viewing. We're node. We have some pictures. We get to do this fancy cloud zoom thing. Enter cart. Oh, we need something with attributes. We need to go. We need something with options. Like nothing here. Let's see. Something's got to have sizes. Do they? Yes, they do. Boom. What is to geek
I don't know
out?
where it is, but I never find it. All products. There it is.
All right. Which I need to find out if they sell these things.
I want to find out about it.
Don't you get it for free?
And you gotta get the USB key to actually make commerce work. So if you plug that in, all your problems.
All right.
They don't have that variation.
There's gotta be something.
No, there it is. So size doesn't matter. on
Right.
USB.
Because there is a. All right, whatever. We're just gonna edit this. So you're in here, right? You have your title, body field, product variations. Boom, boom, boom. That keyword. This is using the inline entity form, which if you're ever using commerce and you build it from the ground up, it should be one of the first modules you grab and you use for managing your variations. Why? So color, we're gonna make it cream. We're gonna say it's a 17-inch. Price, ball in one, so it's gonna be $2,500. We're gonna click create variation. So now we're in here, and Commerce Kickstart does come with the auto SKU module. So see here how it says title, auto-generated when the form is saved, SKU, auto-generated when the form is saved. So there are things to help remove some of this tedious work from the customer. Again, that's where Commerce Kickstarter is great, is it does implement some of that stuff for you that you may not have known about if you went ham and started without a distribution.
So is there a parent product to this, or can you delete this? Is there any kind of relationship you have to maintain with these variations?
No, if I like deleted the node,
Yeah.
it could be configured to delete those variations.
Okay.
If I deleted the node and I didn't do that, they would just be sitting in the backend for data purposes. They would be orphaned. They'd be all lonely. So I added a cream one, right? Well, now all of a sudden I have this extra attribute. And when I click on it, Ajax happened and I didn't attach images, but this is what I was talking about. The images were on the product entity level, and the product reference field allows you to pull those same fields and act like they're on the node. Case in point, everybody's pretty familiar with the manage display tab on a content type. Bags and cases, manage display. So see on images, modify settings for this field on the product variation type, manage display configuration. So here, those are from the product entity and that bundle. And I can choose to whether make it visible or hidden. So it's actually pulling it into the main reference. Whereas if if you're used to entity reference, you can just show like the labels or the actual rendered entities that are referenced. This actually draws them in through like hook node attached or extra fields, something like that. Here's the product reference field again, add cart form, or could have it show all the different SKUs and links, which products don't actually have a viewable URI, so not sure where that can go. There's different attributes you can do, like the line item type. I didn't go into that because that's more advanced. See here, then select size, since the other variation didn't have a size, one size.
This is a responsive thing.
Yes, the demo store is built off of, if you have the demo store, it's Commerce Kickstart theme. If it's a non-demo store, it's Omega Kickstart, which is a sub-theme of Omega 3. So it is actually a great site builder distro, because if you don't know, if you're not like super front end, Justin, you covered Omega 3 a bit last month ago, 2 months? Some eons ago. If I went to, where do I even get to that? Settings? Omega 3 is responsive out of the box, and you can do all the crazy zone branding. So it is Omega 3, the site builder theme, and is responsive. The Omega Kickstart theme provides some commerce elements to help make it responsive even if you don't do the demo store, such as you got the fancy drop downs. Yeah. So it does have some of that baked in. Let's go on like the catalog. No, not like the catalog was anything crazy, but that's what's broken. It's testing something else there. So yeah, it's definitely something great. Like if you want to make your first commerce site, or you have something that's a very low requirement and it's super simple, spin it up, add it in, get it going. To highlight what I meant by don't use the demo site and then try to take away the demo-ness.
Yeah.
So, and there's two features. There's Commerce Kickstart product and Commerce Kickstart Lite product. If you have the demo store, the regular product one gets enabled, which has a hook node info declare that there's drinks and bags and cases. So they don't have a delete. It's because that's enabled. Although I think now with 7.38 or 7.37, if you disable and uninstall the module, you can finally delete the things, I think. But that's why if you're going to play around, install the demo store. If you're planning on doing something, do a new site that's not the demo store. Keep the demo store up so that way you can reference and see how things are done maybe. The configuration is pretty much the same except for content that gets dropped in. So show the payment methods quick. Like I said, it's a rules UI. Rules has this awesome extension that you can take what it provides and give it your own UI, like commerce shipping, payment pricing, taxes. They all implement the rules admin API. So that way, example payment. I click edit. For those familiar with rules, editing reaction rule, example payment, events, select available payments for an order. What if you had something that wasn't available if they were in South America? I don't know. A lot of this comes into play when you're dealing with Europe because there's more laws, but let's say that's the case. In here, you could do, add condition, commerce profile, customer, order. Oh, it shows up under order, but order address component comparison, right? We need to check something about where they live. So address, we're going to pick the billing information address. Address component, say it is country equals, let's play Canada right now. Change my. So if we hit save, actually, I just made it so that it only works if they're from Canada. Let me adjust that. So negate, I click negate. Again, Commerce is using rules to power all this. It's not like they went and blazed their own trail and implemented their own interface for applying these things. They're reusing what's existing. And then if I click edit on the action, this is where you'd configure your payment settings. This one that doesn't have one, but if you're PayPal, this is where you go enter in your PayPal information. If you're using authorize.net, your API credentials, et cetera, et cetera. Pricing rules. So even though there is a section for taxes, it ends up showing that in here because it is a pricing rule. So let's just go for calculate sales tax because that got dropped in with the demo. Calculating the sale price of a product. Conditions, none, so it's always going to apply. Calculate the taxes for a line item. That goes to sales tax. So there's the pricing rule, but then in taxes, so if we did add a tax rate, so the pricing rule allows you to select what tax rate will get applied. So here, if it was in our machine name, big WI sales. Sales tax, description needs to be in a decimal. Wisconsin is 5% for state tax. Click save tax rate. So if I went into configure component, this is where you add the individual conditions. I screwed up before. The pricing rules allows you to trigger your different your tax types, such as VAT or sales tax, and then you come and you add the different taxes, and then you add the conditions here. So this is where we want to add 5% sales tax. Data compare. We want to compare order address. Say it's shipping, because I can't remember off the top of my head. Administrative area equals WI. Save. So if the person who's being shipped to is in Wisconsin, they're going to get charged sales tax. Oh. Okay, so you're going to have to go through the whole awesome rules token thing, which would be commerce line item. You want to get to the order. You want to get to the containing the profile reference. You want to stop there. You're gonna do some Googling, or you're gonna do some visiting of DrupalCommerce.org, which has documentation on it, such as all these goodies. Who uses the Drupal Answers site? Does anybody troll this? Okay, there's a few. Bam, check this out. I started to come here a lot more and troll the Drupal Commerce and Commerce Kickstart one. I answer things as soon as I can. But if you have a question, chances are it's been asked here. Do a Google search for it and find the answers. One thing I'd like to do once I have time in my life is try to find, like, aggregate these and add them to DrupalCommerce.org or make some more visibility with it. But yeah, if you have issues, I highly recommend checking this out. DrupalCommerce.org has a question section. Please go here instead of the question section on Drupal.org. You'll get more visibility, such as when trying to set up your sales tax and it's telling you what to select. Any other immediate questions? Comments or?
Is there a way to auto-populate an invoice number or order number into the payment system?
So like when an order is created, saying the checkout. So orders actually have two attributes. There's order ID, which is the auto incremented ID in the database. And then there's order number, which is what can be front facing to a user. By default, let's go to order settings and see. All right, cool. So it's not here. By default, that order number is equal to the order ID. But if you get a contributed module or write your own, because you may not need everything that this comes with, there is Commerce Billing for light billing, I believe. Yeah, lightweight billing approach. Thread safe invoice number generation, number generation methods. It's like a token system for populating order numbers as orders are created. So that way you could assign it a specific value. If that's what you meant.
Specifically at the checkout, when you put in your credit card number, your previous anything else, can you auto-calculate an invoice order number field at that point?
Like that they would type in?
Processor, so I can pass along level 2 pricing on MasterCard Visa to the merchant.
Like passing the order number to the merchant, or?
No, to the processor.
To the processor, yeah, that can send along to. You can.
Okay, so
pass.
That can be auto-populated?
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's e-commerce merchant who's working business to business, taxable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you could automatically make that accessible.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, so it's Drupal, right? It doesn't make opinions. It's super flexible, which is also the step up using it. But if you need any kind of data attached to it, you can do it. Sometimes you need to. I know, for instance, the Commerce AuthNet at the time didn't support sending the phone number, which the profiles don't have a phone number field, right? They just have address. We added phone. Well, they needed to send phone numbers so that way it would show up in their QuickBooks or something like that. I did the bad juju thing and I forked Commerce AuthNet for myself and updated how it sends the transaction data to add that extra info. The right thing to do would have been open an issue on the issue queue, try to write a patch, and then use the patch. But hey, I know we all have deadlines to meet, and it's not a perfect world. But yeah, it's pretty flexible, and that's when honestly, if you don't see it, post something somewhere, and it could be how can we make it that people can inject data where they need to.
Yeah, that's something that business owners know of, some processors.
Yeah.
If you're selling business to business and it's a taxable item, corporation to corporation, that is business and MasterCard Visa 1. So they're going to reduce your rate because they want your business, but you have to justify that to MasterCard and Visa by providing them an invoice number order number to the processor, and the processor has to be set up to do it, to communicate with them, and then knock the rate down on that card from 2.65 to 2.35. Well, not a lot of basis points on it is what it'll do. And that's saying that merchant a ton of money, but it has to have that for justification purposes. And it can be wrong.
Yeah. And a lot of people use.
I didn't tell you that, but it's.
A lot of people use Drupal Commerce for B2B. I know there's somebody in Chicago who most of their Drupal Commerce work is B2B and enterprise B2B too. So
75% of merchants do not get that cost reduction. They have no idea it exists. There are several others that flat around.
So
Very.
if it's something that can be tweaked and done, it can totally be done here. Might take a little bit of poking to figure out where you need to go, but yeah.
What you talking, 0.5%?
Yeah.
I knew a trading company that when they sent their trades into the exchange, if you were late with your deadline, you would get charged a fee. So after the deadline, they would send it as an adjustment as like fixed data. And then they figured that they were correcting the data, they would just apply the transactions and they weren't charging the late fee. So there's all kinds of things when you're sending transactions around which can avoid fees.
All right. So it's almost 8. I'm going to shut down the sharing because that's just about time. Goodbye, whoever was watching.